didn't have a thing better to do. So what he thought would be fun, we'd make a bunch of rules to ruin my life. So he wrote the Bible, the 10 Commandments, which we all know are rules to wreck everybody's fun. And if that wasn't bad enough, when I was a kid in church, we used to sing this song all the time. Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see. Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see, for the Father up above is looking down in love. I didn't hear the in love part. I heard the Father up above is looking down with lightning bolts ready to fry you if you blow it. That is God's job. Make up a bunch of silly rules, sit up there all day long and watch you. So if you blow it, break a commandment, he's like, fried, saw you. Since God loves you, and God loves me, and God's law is not about wrecking our fun and ruining our weekend. It's about giving us the best. Jesus said he came to bring us life, but God took a colossal risk at the beginning of time, and if I were God, I would not have done it, which is why I'm not. God, for some reason I cannot understand, decided to let you choose. He gave you a choice, knowing full well that all of us at one point would shake our fists in his face and tell him we don't need him, we don't need his rules. God doesn't need to tell me how to live my life. I can do it my way. And what would follow would be sin, disease, pain, and death. Even though he knew that, he still let you choose. Students, God created sex, but he created it with a boundary. And when sex happens within the boundary for which it was created, it is awesome. When it happens outside of that boundary, it's horribly, horribly destructive. What is the boundary, the context for which God created sex? Anyone? Go ahead. Marriage is the right answer. Some of you didn't know that. Most of you don't believe that. You don't believe that. How many church kids I've had in my clinic go to church every week, get confirmed, show up in my clinic and go, yeah, but we loved each other. So, God did not create sex for love. That is not the boundary. God created sex for one context and one only, permanent, lifetime commitment, marriage, not love. Now, sometimes in marriage there's love. That's helpful. On occasion there's not the criteria. 35 years ago, I walked an aisle and I said these words to a young man whom I loved. You and you only. For better, for worse. For richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. I was brain damaged. So is he. Guess what we got? Sicker, poor, and worse. Sorry to burst your bubble. Somehow before we get married, when we're single, teenage girls, we think marriage is going to be happily ever after, excitement, heart-pounding romance, one big long date. I blame Disney. Actually, I know why all you students think that, because you look at your parents' marriage, and that is the most romantic relationship you have ever known. And you know yours will look like that. My marriage didn't look like that. Looked at my husband and said, my goodness, it's got to be you, because I'm the most exciting thing that ever lived. I mean, people, if there are problems in my marriage, it is his fault. If I dump him and get a better guy, I'd have a great marriage. My marriage has problems. You know why? I'm in it. When you get married, your marriage will have problems. You'll be in it. There is a God and you're not him. I didn't say to my husband, I'll stay married to you if. You treat me the way I expect to be treated, you put your socks where they belong, you don't gain 500 pounds in the next 10 years. And he didn't say that to me, thank God. What I said was, I'm committed to you for the rest of my life, no matter what. That is the safe context for sex. Not a fuzzy feeling, not we like each other. Marriage. And I love God's law because it's easy. It's not complicated. Even the stupid of you can get this. This does not take a 4.0. Either you're married or you're not. And you can't be kind of married or almost married any more than you can be kind of pregnant. It is an A or B situation. And here's the other reason I love God's law. And here's where I get in trouble with the adults. This isn't a teenage discussion. This isn't a talk for teenagers. This boundary is the same for every single person in this room. Has nothing to do with age. Here is the rule, the boundary. If you are not married, don't do it. If you are married, go for it with the person you're married to. Have to put that in there. Some of us get confused. Right? You're not out on a date on Friday night going, I don't know, does he love me? He said it. He's really cute. We're going to get married in June. He went to Jared's. What should I do? Are you married? Now then don't. If you forget everything I tell you, and you can only remember one thing from me, this is what I want you to hear today. If you have sex outside of marriage, if you have sex outside of one permanent, monogamous, and monogamy does not mean one at a time. That is one partner who has only been with you. You have sex outside of that context and you'll pay. There's a cost. No one has ever had more than one partner and not paid. Question we have to ask is, what is the cost and is it worth paying? Physically, emotionally, spiritually. Physical cost, help me out, students. What are most teens who are having sex afraid of? What's their biggest fear? What is it? Pregnancy is the biggest fear of teens having sex today. Doesn't make a bit of sense to me. Got a news flash for you, students. Pregnancy is not a disease. It's actually survivable. You can live through it. I've lived through it 3 times now. A few extra pounds here and there hasn't killed me yet. I'd have girls come into my clinic for a pregnancy test. This little girl's scared to death, waiting for the results of that test. I walk in, look at this little girl, and say, your test is negative, sweetheart. You're not pregnant. She gets this look of relief over her face. Like, I am off the hook, not pregnant. Thank you very much. Let me out of your clinic. Wait a minute. Have you been tested for syphilis, gonorrhea, herpes, chlamydia, trichomonas, vulvodynia, arthritis, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, HPV, HIV? You been tested for that? Me, I go to Lutheran high school. I don't go to Kohler. That stays in this gym right here. You mean I would need to be tested for that? This little girl is in my clinic thinking she could possibly be pregnant, and she does not think she could have an STD. Students, you have a 5 times greater risk of contracting an STD than you ever have of being pregnant. Pregnant teen girls in Wisconsin are carrying, on average, 2.3 sexually transmitted infections. Not 1, not 2, most of them 3 or more. But they were not worried about getting that STD, were they? No, they didn't want to get pregnant. Every high school I'm in, without exception. And you do not know how I wish today and tomorrow would be the exception, and they won't be. Every high school. I will have a girl write me, email me, or come right up to me and say this. Well, my mom found out I was having sex, and so she put me on the pill. Or Depo, or an IUD with massive amount of hormones. What's that protecting that girl from? What does birth control protect you from? Pregnancy. Guys are awake, girls are struggling. Pregnancy most of the time. That drug, that pill, shot, IUD that this girl is taking has just made her 10 times more likely to contract an STD than if she were not taking those drugs. This little girl could end up sterile or dead. Thanks, Mom. Glad you cared. Is pregnancy the worst thing that could happen if you had sex today? Never. Absolutely never. Far worse things than that. However, over 9 years, I had to tell a lot of young girls that their test was positive. Immediately, they want an easy, painless way out of this pregnancy they didn't plan. And I have to look at this little girl and say, guess what, sweetheart? Your choices at this point are bad, terrible, and even worse. Those are your options. You had a good choice. That was before you had sex. Now all the choices you've got are going to carry lifelong consequences. No easy way out of a pregnancy you didn't plan. Abortion is painful. I've counseled hundreds of women 5, 10, 15, 20 years after having an abortion, still hurting. I've counseled teen girls with anorexia, bulimia, depression, cutting, attempted suicide because of an abortion they couldn't take back. That is not like going to the dentist and getting your tooth pulled. There are consequences forever to that choice. Parenting is not an easy choice. I was in middle school in Ohio, met a 7th grade girl, 12 years old, pregnant with twins. I was in Chicago recently, met a 24-year-old grandmother. I made her do the math. Beautiful young girl. She's holding a little baby. I said, baby's beautiful. She goes, well, it's my grandbaby. And I'm not the best judge of age. But I was looking at this girl going, I said, how old are you? She said, 24. So you're going to do the math for me, sweetheart. She was 12 when she had her daughter. She was holding her 12-year-old daughter's son. Because teen moms have teen moms who have teen moms until someone in this generational cycle says it stops here. Girls, 80% of teen girls who choose to parent children while they're teens will live below the poverty level for at least 10 years, most of them for the rest of their lives, and 90% of those girls will never attend or graduate from college. And 10 out of 10 of them sat in my clinic going, not me, Miss Pam, I'm going to finish high school, work full-time, go to college, be a doctor, get on Teen Mom, make $65,000 a season. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah. You know what the number one indicator of poverty is in our country? And are you aware that we have poverty in the United States? Because when I was in Africa, the kids are all like, what? Poverty in the United States of America? It's the wealthiest nation in the world. You don't have poverty in your country. Yeah, we do. Number one indicator of poverty in my country has nothing to do with race or where you live. Number one indicator of poverty in the United States is single-parent households in the age of that young girl when she began parenting alone. Teen moms. Serious responsibility, girls. This is not a game. This is not a new puppy. This isn't someone to love you. Boys, in case you've all fallen asleep now, because we're talking about pregnancy and this clearly does not involve you. Young men, you get a girl pregnant in the lovely state of Wisconsin, Illinois, Minnesota, pick a state, it doesn't matter. You get a girl pregnant in this country, boys, whom you are not legally married to. Not who you like a whole lot, that does not count. Right, boys, you get a girl pregnant you're not married to, and you need to understand, young men, that you have absolutely no legal right to the choice she makes. This girl can do whatever she wants. You have no say. And suing her for stealing your sperm might prove to be a bit difficult. You could try. If, however, boys, if this girl decides to parent her child, if that's a decision she makes about her pregnancy, she's going to keep the baby, you now have legal responsibility. It's costing us over, $70 billion a year to support teenage girls parenting their children. We can't pay this bill. Over the last couple decades, we've undergone welfare reform. As part of the Federal Welfare Reform Act, we are now requiring in all 50 states the Social Security numbers of both parents on every birth certificate of every child born in this country. Girls are not allowed to say, I don't know who the dad is. Don't feel like naming him. We will have your Social Security number on that paperwork. Boys, if you are named as the father of a child, you will be notified by the county. County Health Department's going to send you a note saying you've been named as the father of this child born to this girl on this day. You will have between 60 and 120 days to show up at the county and say, it's not me. She pulled my name out of a hat. That girl's lying. She's been everywhere. It's not my kid. They'll do a DNA test. If that test proves you are not the biological father, they're going back to mom and saying, sorry, try again. So we have somebody's Social Security number on that paperwork. Why we change the law, boys? Why do we want that number? So we can let you know when your kid starts kindergarten? Send you a nice note? Go ahead. Yeah. I had an 8th grader raise his hand one day. He goes, so that the child will know who his dad is? No. Money's what we're after, guys. It's going to cost you over the next 18 years between $70,000 and $100,000, and your pay will be garnished. If you are not working, you will incur debt. And when and if you ever do get a job, it's coming out of your paycheck. Let me make this clear. This is not a bill the state of Wisconsin is going to politely ask you to pay. Actually, the state of Wisconsin, if you're underage and not employed, has the right to go after your parents' income until you are fully employed, which is thanks to former Governor Tommy Thompson. That's how Wisconsin works. But we will garnish your wages. It's not a bill the state's going to ask you to pay. It's coming out of your paycheck, taken out by your employer before you ever see it. I was speaking in my home state of Minnesota, way up north, tiny little rural high school, place where people from Minneapolis go to hang out at their cabins and fish during the summer. I got done speaking at this high school, and a senior boy got up in front of his whole school, told them all for the first time that he was a father. It was a girl vacationing in their town the summer before. He had no intentions of marrying this girl. He wasn't going to marry her. And 9 months later, he's a dad. He's allowed to see his daughter one weekend every 3 months. That's when they can arrange transportation from the cities. But he's being required by the state of Minnesota to pay $350 a month to support that infant daughter based on his current income. He's not a pro ball player. He's working at Burger King. Looked at Sean in front of his whole school that morning. I said, Sean, if you had anything at all to say to the boys sitting in this gym about what you learned your senior year, buddy, what would you say? Sean said 2 words. Don't drink. I pressed him. He said, Pam, I made a decision to drink and I wouldn't have made sober, and I'm going to pay for that for the rest of my life. Not only will Sean pay, so will a little girl from Minneapolis, so will their daughter. And so will every other relationship either of them have for the rest of their lives. Because he was drunk? You can have all the right answers today, students. I hope you do. That's why I'm here. You walk out of here saying, you know what, I don't want an unplanned pregnancy, all those diseases, cancer, infertility. I want sex to mean something. I'm going to wait. And then one night you get drunk and have no concept what you're doing. I've had university girls on my clinic. We just opened a brand new pregnancy clinic on the campus of University of Florida in Gainesville. That's where I've spent most of my time this fall, getting that clinic up and off the ground. We'll have university girls come into our clinic for a pregnancy test, scared to death. I do the test, it's negative. She's bolting out my door. I'm like, sweetheart, you're not done here. You need pap smears and blood tests for the next 5 years. She's like, well, Miss Pam, I don't need all those tests because I was drunk. So herpes is asking now, is that how that works? Because I was unaware of that one. Excuse me, are you drunk or sober? Because we only infect sober people. Drunk people get a pass. Doesn't count. Unbelievable. Serious responsibility, young men. And my suggestion to the boys sitting in this gym is that you would better think about that before you have sex. After, if you're not married, is too late. Choice is not yours. Third option a young girl has if she finds herself pregnant, didn't intend to be, which I happen to think is the best option available to girls today, but it's not without pain. This is going to carry consequences. It's adoption. The ability of a young girl to take the child she's carried with her for 9 months and loves with everything she is, to say, I want what's best for my child, and I'm not it, and I'm willing to go through all of this pain in order to give my child a family. That takes a lot of courage and a lot of maturity and love. It is not easy. 1.5 million requests for adoption will go unanswered this year in our country. I answer the hotline for the National Safe Haven hotline, where young women are able to call if they have had a child and they don't know how to care for them and legally surrender that infant at a fire station or hospital. Law differs by days and how it's done in different states. But I got a call, it was 2 days before New Year's, for a woman in crisis in the state of Florida. Twins who were above the age of legal surrender. The state of Florida is only 7 days. She was desperate, she was homeless, babies weren't being cared for. And myself and my head nurse from Sarasota got in a car, drove all the way to Miami, and picked those little babies up. And it's been a long, 10 days now. But as I'm speaking to you today, we had probably 50 to 100 adoptive couples beg to take these twins. And a lovely young couple who can't have children should be landing right now in Sarasota to pick up their little babies. It's amazing. I wanted to be there, but I'm here, so I'm vicariously living through that meeting. What an amazing gift from a mom who probably should have made that decision a little earlier in her pregnancy, but at least she reached out and did the right thing at that point. We have so many couples waiting and no infants available. Average adoption now runs about $90,000. And international adoption can be even more. It takes a lot of love for a girl to make an adoption plan. To say, I want what's best for my child. It takes a lot of love. 55 years ago in Michigan, a young 15-year-old girl became pregnant, had a lot of difficult choices to make, maybe more so than some teen girls. She was raped. But this 15-year-old girl chose to give her child life and then to place that child with an adoptive family. And that child was me. My biological father is a rapist. I don't even know my ethnicity. But I am still a human being. And I still have value. And I don't believe that my life is worth less than yours just because of the way I was conceived. And I don't believe that I deserve the death penalty because of the crime of my biological father. And I've listened to the rhetoric my whole life. My whole life. Listen to people say, well, every child should be wanted and planned. I've heard this said in the church. Well, I wouldn't have an abortion. That's horrible. I wouldn't kill my child. But if it were rape, you're a mistake, Pam. I don't believe that. I believe that every child is wanted by someone. And I believe that God in his mercy had a plan for me. I've not met my birth mom. Someday I hope to. She's my hero. If I get a chance to meet her someday, I'm going to wrap my arms around her. I'm going to tell her I love her because she loved me. She loved me enough to give me my life, and then she loved me enough to give me the next most special gift I was ever given, and that's my family. I'm the oldest of 8 children. 7 of us adopted. Every color of the rainbow in my family. We are the United Nations by ourselves. And I know that my amazing family was a gift from a very scared 15-year-old girl. And I will forever be grateful to her for that gift. Since I have spent my life walking young women through this crisis, spent my life doing it. And one of the reasons I've spent my life doing this is because I firmly believe that what my birth mother needed in her time of extreme crisis wasn't to have me ripped violently from her womb. She didn't need violence on top of violence. She needed someone to love her. She needed someone to walk alongside her. She needed someone to say, we'll be there for you. Every step of this way, whatever it takes, we will be there for you. Listen to me. There are pregnancy centers all over, pregnancy clinics and pregnancy centers all over this country. There's one here in Sheboygan. Everything we do is absolutely free and completely confidential. We will go to the ends of the earth to make sure you get help. Whatever it takes. Please get help. If you don't know where help is, get a hold of me. I will find help for you. I found help for a little girl in an international school in Dubai. We will find help for you. Get help. Pregnancy survival, though, we can live through that. Sweetheart, I could walk you through that. I would gladly walk you through that. That is not the worst thing that could happen if you had sex today. Far worse things than that. Today, January 9, in the next 24 hours, 35,000 high school students will contract a sexually transmitted infection. Today. And those are high school students. When I add the college population, it's astronomical. Students, let me be clear with you. We have had an exponential increase in STI infections over the last 4 years. The CDC released their stats. They release them every year in October. We get the stats from the year before. This October, we have topped all records. It was astounding. We had 24.5 million new infections with STDs in this country, and a full 60% of that number are people between the ages of 15 and 24. That's our epicenter. And let me tell you, there is a reason we opened our clinic on the campus of the University of Florida. I can show you state by state where the highest STI infection rates are, and it follows the university system every single time. Our college campuses are one big giant disease. 35,000 teenagers who got up this morning and probably said, like somebody's sitting in this gym, what's not going to happen to me? Pam, that happens in Milwaukee and Green Bay and Appleton and scary places like Howard, but we're okay here. Doesn't happen at our school. Wrong. In the 1950s, students, In the 1950s, we had 5 sexually transmitted infections we knew about and were treating. 5. You could count them on one hand. Go find a grandparent. Go find somebody who grew up in the 50s or 60s. Ask them. This will be a great dinner table conversation next time you're at Grandma's. Y'all try this. Make sure all the relatives are present. Grandma, were there STDs when you were a kid? Did people have those? You talk about it at school, at church. Did you have crazy speakers come to your Lutheran high school and yell about syphilis in 1964? No. I mean, maybe a few people back then had an STD, got a shot of penicillin, moved on. Welcome to 2020. We now have over 30 sexually transmitted infections, 30% of them absolutely incurable. That means you get one of these STDs and you've got it for life, which is a lovely thing, boys, when you're getting ready to get married. Found this girl you love. I mean, this is it. She's the one you want to marry. All those other girls, that was just messing around. This is the real thing. Pull out that diamond, look her in the eyes. If you're really cool, you get on your knees. It's really cool. And say, marry me. By the way, I've got genital warts. You'll get it too, and we'll both be treated for the rest of our lives. In fact, you'll probably end up with a radical hysterectomy, cervical cancer, and possibly death. But marry me. Well, I'm excited now. Thanks for sharing. Don't you want to tell your wife, guys? Lovely. HPV, genital warts, syphilis, gonorrhea, herpes, chlamydia, trichomonas, vulvodynia, arthritis, hepatitis B, hepatitis C. List goes on and on and on. Serious diseases with serious consequences. HIV is not the only STD out there and certainly not the only one that's killing people. Yet we still have teenagers who actually think, well, if I don't get pregnant or I don't get AIDS, well, then I don't have anything to worry about. I'm fine then. No way. No way. Chlamydia, one of the most common STDs among the students here at Lutheran High is chlamydia. This is a bacteria, not a virus, easily treated and easily cured. If we knew you had it, we could help you. 7 days worth of antibiotics, we can wipe this out. 2 types of STDs, students. If you have not yet had biology, or if you flunked, pay attention. You'll get a better grade next time. 2 types of STDs. Bacterial and viral, or non-viral and viral. A bacteria is curable. There's medication we can give you, we can take care of that. A virus is not. You get a virus, you've got it for life. There is no cure. We've never in the history of the world cured a virus. We're now scaring old people with this. Have you seen the commercials? They're like everywhere in Florida. If you had the chicken pox as a child, the shingles virus lives inside you. Of course it does. It's a virus. That's what they do. Chlamydia is not a virus. It's a bacteria. It's curable. We test freely for chlamydia in most of our pregnancy clinics. We certainly do it in the ones that I'm in charge of in Florida. So what's the big problem? If it's easily detected, easily, cheaply tested for, and easily cured, what's the problem? I'll tell you what the problem is. 90% of teenagers who have chlamydia, there are no symptoms. You can't treat an STD you don't know you have. We got thousands of teens out there having sex going, well, it's not bothering me. See, Pam, I've had sex, but I don't have one of those STDs. Never been tested. Certainly not in the last 3 weeks, but I know I don't have that. How in the world would you know that? Let me tell you something pretty safe to say I know about you. If I've got a teenager sitting in this gym who's had sex, let me tell you something I'm pretty sure I know about you. True of teens all over the world. It's no different here. You actually believe that if you get up the next morning and herpes isn't tattooed to your forehead, you don't have an STD. If I can't see it, feel it, or touch it, I don't have it. Pam, if I had an STD, I would know. My nose would turn purple, my ears would be red, something would burn. I would know. No, you would not know. The only way you would know about chlamydia is if you got tested. You're not getting tested because you don't think it's going to happen to you, and you think if you don't feel sick, you're not sick. Actually think you'd know. Every time I speak at youth gathering, we got a chance to be in Minneapolis this year. It was awesome fun. Whenever I get done speaking in big crowds like that or stadiums, I'll get done and about 1,000 kids will be rushing up to me. Pam, you need to come to my school. We had 8 girls pregnant. We have the highest pregnancy rate in our county. But I don't know anyone at my school who's got an STD. Really? First of all, your friends aren't getting tested. And even if they were, do you think they'd tell you? Come on, Lutheran high school, they're going to tell you? Hey, girls, went to the doctor yesterday, found out I had herpes. Tell everybody by lunch. And I'd like the whole school to know by the end. Maybe we could put it on the announcements. I think we're going to try that this semester. We'll just see how it goes. Every Monday morning, right after prayer here at Lutheran High School, we're going to do this. The following students contracted an STD over the weekend. They are. Well, people, that would be helpful. And then we would all know. What did you think, girls? You actually think you're going to show up the Monday after prom, walk the hallways of the school, and go, purple nose. Did you see his nose, girls? He did not have that last Friday. Don't touch him. Herpes. I saw his nose. Do you think you would know who's sitting in this gym has an STD? Because 1 out of 4 of you do. 1 out of 4 of our high school students on every campus is infected. Do you think you'd know who they are? There's no way you'd know. American Medical Association released a bulletin, said this. Every teenage girl who has had sex must be tested for chlamydia every 6 months. Every teenage girl who has had sex must be screened for chlamydia every 6 months. Why girls? Why not the boys? Don't boys get this? Of course they do. Who do you think the girls are getting it from? If you're getting it from each other, we have another discussion I was not prepared to have. Now, you can get it that way, to be clear. But boys and girls both get this and give it to each other. So why are the doctors only concerned that we're testing girls? I'll tell you, girls, listen up. Girls, you contract chlamydia 1 time in your lifetime, cured or not, and there is a 20% chance you will be sterile for the rest of your life. Get this twice, girls, it jumps to 50% or 30 or 40% 3 times, and there's a pretty good chance you'll never have children. We literally have hundreds of thousands of women entering their mid-20s going, I'd like to start my family now. I'm married, I finished college, finally found a good guy, done with all the messing around I did when I was a teenager. Now I want to be, well, I went to confession for that. That's my past. Now I want to be a mom. She tries. She can't get pregnant. Goes right into a doctor. He checks and says, my goodness, sweetheart, you got all this scar tissue in your fallopian tubes, your ovaries, your uterus. You have pelvic inflammatory disease, PID. You had chlamydia when you were a teenager. What? I had what? I had a sexually transmitted infection. How could I have had that? I never knew. Too late, girls. Hear me carefully. Infertility among women has risen over 500% in 1 decade. The girls who graduated from Lutheran High School in 2010, many of them are just now today finding out they will never have children because of choices they made sitting where you're sitting. Girls, can I love just a minute? This boy can dump you, leave Lutheran High, go to UW, meet another girl, go to Concordia, meet another girl, marry her, and have a family. This isn't going to hurt him. Girls, you're scarred for life. You have more to lose, girls. Please don't miss this. I am really sorry. Life is not fair. I can't make this fair. Can't even the score. Girls, you will pay a higher price physically every single time. Hold on to it. I'm coming back to it. Number 1 STD in the world, in the United States, in Wisconsin, the number 1 STD is still human papilloma virus, HPV. This is a virus. What does that mean? No cure. You get it, you got it forever. You're going to give it to everyone you have sex with. It is not only the most common STD, it is the most contagious STD we know. Street name for HPV or human papillomavirus is genital warts. Basically, warts on your genital area that need to be burned off periodically, either through laser surgery or chemicals. Now, we used to think that was the only big deal. You just get a few warts down there and burn them off till we realized a few things about the virus. One is you can have HPV, you can be giving it to partners without ever having warts. The most cancerous strains of this virus don't, and listen, I'm coming back to it, there are over 100 strains mutating of HPV today. The most cancerous strains don't produce warts at all. Teenagers are not infecting each other with this because you mean to. You don't mean to. You don't know you have it. Girls, if you get warts or lesions as a result of being infected with HPV, typically girls, they will be on your cervix. When was the last time you saw your cervix? I had an 8th grade boy in Detroit look up at me and go, I don't know. I said, you don't have one, honey, breathe. The cervix is the opening to the uterus, and boys, you don't have one of those either. I know When I say genital warts to teenagers, that I could have a student in here who's had sex who in your mind is going to do this. Well, she said that wart thing, and I have never seen a wart down there. I don't have that. My friend, if you've had sex or sexual contact, I'm going to define that in a minute, and you have not been tested by a physician specifically for HPV, and boys, that's a blood test that costs in excess of $1,000. There is not a free clinic in this nation that will test boys for HPV, and the insurance companies don't pay. We don't pay for this test. It's not only expensive, it's completely inaccurate. It could take 5 years from the time a male is infected before he would test positive on our blood test. And yet we have boys saying stuff like this to girls. I don't have anything. I got tested. For what? And how much did it cost you? And I sure hope it's been 5 years since you last had sex. Students, high school students, STD testing cannot tell you what you don't have. We can't tell anybody what they don't have. We have kids thinking they can have sex on Friday night, run to a clinic a month later, and tell people that you don't have an STD simply because you got tested? Come on. Now, we are testing girls for this. We've been doing this forever. We test girls completely differently from boys. Tests for girls can take 3 years from the time you're infected before you would test positive, but we have been testing girls annually. We test girls through a thin prep pap smear or pap test, which is a scraping of the cervix. Why don't we test boys that way? Didn't think that was tough, high school students. You don't have one. Very good. We're now requiring every woman who's ever had sex to get a pap test annually. If you are under the age of 22 and you've had sex, you are at highest risk. Girls, the younger you are, the easier you are to infect and the more damage to your cervix. Your age matters. If I've got a girl in here under 22 who's had sex, you must be getting that pap. A negative pap test, girls, doesn't mean you don't have HPV. It means you don't yet have cervical cancer. Some of you have heard there's a vaccine for this quickly. We released a vaccine, or Merck did, in 2006. Originally, Gardasil was only given to girls. We now have begun vaccinating boys. We have no idea its effectiveness in boys, but we made $40 billion year one vaccinating girls. So bring on the boys, puppies, and kittens. Bring everybody in. Here's what you need to know about the vaccine. Gardasil is not a vaccine for cancer. It is a vaccine for this sexually transmitted infection, HPV. Gardasil must be given to a girl who is a virgin. If you are not a virgin, it most likely will do no good, which is why they targeted 11 and 12-year-old girls. Gardasil given to a virgin girl, Gardasil 9 now, is good for 9 out of the 100 strains of this virus. 91 strains still there. This in no way guarantees you will not be infected or develop cervical cancer. Here's the takeaway. Every girl, vaccinated or not, within 1 to 2 years of becoming sexually active will need an annual pap test. Please still get screened. Hopefully that was clear. Boys, HPV is a little annoying. Having warts burned off your genital area is painful, I'm guessing. We have seen males with throat cancers in their 30s, which is younger than we would expect to see as a result of HPV infection. But for the most part, you're going to live. But I would hate to have to be there when you had to tell the girl you loved and wanted to marry about every single partner you've ever had, because I have to know. My risk of infection has nothing to do with whether you used a condom or got tested. My risk of infection has everything to do with where you've been. I have to know every single partner. Hear me carefully. It is unconscionable, absolutely unacceptable that anyone in this gym, and I'm including the staff and myself, unconscionable that anyone would ever have sex with another human being and not honestly tell that person everywhere you've been, every partner. That might not be fun. You're going to live. Girls, you better know where this boy's been. And you better pray to God he's not lying or cheating on you, sweetheart, because this is a big deal for you. HPV is the #1 causal agent of cervical cancer in women. We now have girls as young as 18, 19, and 20 undergoing radical hysterectomies will never have children because of invasive cervical cancer. I had a senior at a Catholic high school come up to me after my talk, came right up to me, end of the school year. She goes, Pam, I got cervical cancer. I got it in the 9th grade. Which means she got HPV in the 7th or 8th. She goes, I've had numerous cryosurgeries, freezings of my cervix. The cancer spread to my uterus. They're doing a hysterectomy next week, 3 weeks before she graduated. She's being tough. She said, Pam, kids are noisy, smelly, cost a lot of money, and I don't want one. Then she got a little teary. So I'm just trying to deal with the fact that I'm going to have to tell the man I love and want to marry that if he marries me, neither will he. Worth this, girls? Because he said he loved you? Because you needed to be popular? It's worth this. 2 things you need to know about HPV students. The CDC says that 67% of the people under 22, teenagers, who have had sex, that's a specific group, that's not all of you. Most of you in here have never had sex, you're virgins, you can run out of this gym yelling virgin, you are perfectly fine. 67% of the students who have had sex are already infected with at least one strain of HPV. That was math you didn't want to do, so let me give it to you clearly. The CDC said 5 years ago that there is now no way anyone under 22 can have sex with someone who is not, in fact, a virgin and not get an STD. Statistical impossibility, which is why in our clinics we're no longer asking if sexually active students are infected. We're simply trying to figure out what you have. Here's why. There's not a condom in the world that will protect you from HPV. I didn't say it might slip, break, fall off, or you left it in the glove compartment. Or you kept it in your glove compartment in Wisconsin and it's frozen solid. That's not what I said. Condoms used properly provide no protection from HPV. HPV and herpes, which is also a virus transmitted the same way, HPV and herpes aren't transmitted the way HIV is. HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, requires the exchange of body fluid. We need blood, semen, or vaginal fluid exchange. Herpes and HPV are skin-contracted viruses. All it takes is skin contact anywhere in the genital area, and you're infected for life and will infect everyone you have genital contact with after that. Doesn't take what some of you think is sex. You know how many teens we've had in our clinics test positive for herpes or HPV who thought they were technically virgins? Thought they could do everything else? Because what was their big fear? What were they worried about? Getting an STD? They're worried about getting pregnant. So I can do all this other stuff. It's not sex. It's safe. It doesn't count. I'm still a virgin. Pam, I don't have to tell people who I did that with because that's not sex. Pam, I'm not worried about those STDs because my boyfriend was a virgin. And you know that because he told me. It is not acceptable to tell teens to not have sex if we're not going to define it. I'm now going to give you the medical definition of sex. This has nothing to do with God's law or moral law. This is strictly medical. God's law is far different. God's law is Ephesians 5:2. But among you who would dare to name the name of Jesus Christ, there better not even be a hint of sexual immorality. Let me translate that. It better not even look like that's what you're doing. That's God's law. But I'm going to give you the medical law. This is the heathen law. This is the medical line over which you can't step. And if you have stepped over this line, you've risked disease and you need to get tested. And don't you dare tell anyone you're a virgin. We got kids running around going, I'm a virgin. I am, I promise. And they're infecting each other like wildfire. Here is the line. Absolutely no genital contact with another human being of any kind. That would be hand to genital, mouth to genital, genital to genital. Oral sex is sex, hence the name oral sex. And if you have had oral sex, you are not a virgin, and don't you dare tell anyone you are. And every partner you ever have will have to know every single person you've done that with. Was that clear? High school students? Y'all know what genital means? Just being sure. Because I get about 100 emails a week from kids. Does that mean shaking hands? We don't usually have genital contact with people we're meeting in the hallway. Hello, nice to meet you. Here's a simple rule. Both of you abide by this rule at all times. You're 100% safe. You can run out of here yelling virgin. Here it is. Ready? Keep your pants on and zipped, boys. And if you've done that, you're fine. If you've not done that, you need to get tested. Is that clear? What if you didn't have HIV and genital warts and syphilis and gonorrhea? What if I could give you a super condom? High school kids get desperate. What if I use 5, a bodysuit? There must be a way. Are there other reasons besides all these STDs we might want to wait till we're married? I think so. I'm stupid enough to think sex is more than a biological act to meet a biological need. I'm such an idiot, such a complete moron, that I actually think sex involves a little bit more than a few body parts touching. I am so old, such a dinosaur, that I actually believe sex involves your heart and your soul. And there isn't a condom in the world that will ever protect your heart and your soul. Students, God created us in his image. Everyone in this room uniquely. Imago Dei, the image of God printed right on you. He created our sexuality. He created us male and female. Very differently. Not unequal, different. And his design from the beginning, from Genesis, was that a man would leave his family and a woman would leave her family, and that they would sacramentally covenant to love each other freely, totally, faithfully, and in this unbelievable union of two souls, fruitfully bring forth new life. The design is impeccable. It's beautiful. It's miraculous, really. My sexuality was meant to be the part of me I gave to my husband. I gave to no one else. That part of him he gave to me. He gave to no one else. The one thing that would make our relationship absolutely unique from any other relationship on the planet. Beautiful design. But as Adam and Eve did, and as mankind has done since the beginning of the time, we've shook our fist in God's face and told him we don't trust him. We don't believe him. We don't care about our Creator or respect or honor him. We're going to do it our way. Every scripture in the New Testament that talks about Jesus' relationship with his church, and we are his church. The words described our groom. He's our groom, and we are the bride. We are the bride of Christ. It is an unbelievable, intimate picture, because in sexuality, the way it was designed, the woman is the most vulnerable. The woman has to agree to completely and totally open herself up and be entered. And that is scary, because all of the pain rests there. And what Jesus is describing is the most beautiful thing. He is 100% to be trusted. His love is beyond measure, and there is nothing he would ever do that would ever damage his bride. And in that amazing love of Christ, to the point where he would give his life for us, we are able to be vulnerable. Our culture has taken, well, it's not our culture, the enemy. Satan knew that if he could destroy sexuality, he could destroy the church. He could destroy God's love and God's design. He could destroy that image that God so carefully placed in each and every human being. And our culture now has treated sex like a game, like a recreational sport. We've dirtied sex to the point where women are just objects to be used, where sex is just something we look at on our smartphones, on our tablets. It's become violent, and it's been totally, every time I think we can't run it into the ground any more than we've run it, we find a new low to dig under. And you got a big choice to make, students. You're going to buy the lies of the enemy that would tell you this is no big deal and you can just get used and dumped and pick up in the next one and treat each other with disrespect and there's no consequence. Or you can trust the God who made you, who created you, who designed you. And trust him with this important thing. I was speaking at a youth pastors conference because I want you to see that these decisions affect you long beyond high school, college. I was speaking at a youth pastors conference. I got done speaking to a group of youth pastors, and a young woman stopped me at the end. She wanted to talk to me alone. She was visibly shaking. I did not have private time in the middle of that conference. I told her what hotel I was staying at. I said, I'm flying out tomorrow. I will meet you at the breakfast at the restaurant in my hotel at 7:30. I've got an hour, and then I got to go get on a plane. Meet me there. The next morning, I got up, went down to that restaurant, and this young wife was sitting there. We sat down. She looked at me. She said, Pam, I was a virgin when I got married. It's good. She said, my husband was not. And I stopped her quickly because I knew where this was going. I said, did you know? Did he tell you? She said, yeah, he told me. I said, all right. They got married. He was a youth pastor. They got married. 2 years into the marriage, she got pregnant with her first child, and pregnancy kicked in the HPV virus, which is very typical of how it works in women. It's a hormonal imbalance. Unbeknownst to either of them, he was infected with HPV, gave it to her, and she ended up with massive condyloma, warts, growing all over her genital area during pregnancy. She had to go in during the pregnancy and have the condyloma burned off 4 times, she told me. They delivered her baby C-section, so we made sure we did not infect the baby with this virus. And she was angry. She sat across the table from me in tears, and she said, Pam, every time I laid on that table, I thought about the girl that did this and my husband and what he did before me. And she goes, I did the right thing. And I'm the one laying on this table, and I'm the one going through a C-section. She was so angry. She's ready to get divorced. And I had to stop her and say very carefully and in love, but strongly, sweetheart, you knew. You knew. And maybe you did not know this would be the result, but you knew. And on that day, you made that commitment. You said for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, till death. That's what you said. And this child, your son, needs his father. Divorce is fixing nothing. You have a virus. You'll give it to the next guy you marry. We can't fix that. I said, you need to get some counseling. Please sit down with your pastor. Pray and heal this marriage. I never met that young man. But I have thought for years, as I've thought about this young wife and that marriage and this young pastor in ministry, what could I have said to him when he was 16? What could I have said to that young man when he was 17, sitting where you're sitting, to say, you know what, maybe it won't be you, but someday it could be your wife. It could be your marriage. Students, sexual integrity is something you will practice or not for the rest of your life. This is not a teenage issue. It's every day. And the problem is, if we don't practice sexual integrity before we get married, it's very difficult to practice it after. My generation thought we could sleep around, sex was no big deal, and we'd put white dresses on and tuxes on and say magic words, and now we would be able to control what we never controlled before we walked the aisle, and we were sadly mistaken. Past behavior predicts future behavior. One of my favorite pastors, I have dinner with him every time I'm in his community. He goes, Pam, every couple that comes to my church to get married has to sit down with me. First thing he asks the couple is this: are you having sex or are you living together? If they say yes to either of those things, this very wise pastor looks at the young couple and says this: you've both told each other by your behavior. By your behavior, you have both told each other that you are perfectly comfortable having sex with someone you're not married to. Weddings don't fix that. Young men, your wife is going to go to prom with somebody else. What do you want him doing with her? What decisions do you make, or you want him to make, or her to make? Girls, your husband's going to be going to prom with somebody else. And every single choice you make, you're going to walk that aisle with. And right now, what you need to think about is not what feels good in the moment, but what's going to be right 10 years from now. That's tough to do. I had the privilege of watching my only daughter. I have one girl walk an aisle in a white dress and mean it. My daughter was a virgin when she got married, so was her husband, and I prayed a lot of years, not just for my daughter, but the man that would marry her and the family that would raise that young man. My daughter sat where you're sitting. She's a teenage girl, went to Lutheran, well, it's K-8, and then went to public school, but she sat where you're sitting. She would do this to me quite regularly. Mom, I know you've told me a million times I can do your talk for you. She was a virgin when she left high school because she went to a high school about this size, and I had a little bit more control. I would have killed any boy that came near her, and I had access. And then I did the scariest thing I have ever done in my life as a parent and dropped my only daughter off at the dorms at Minnesota State University. Cried the whole way home. I lost it. My husband's like, are you okay? I said, I'm not okay because I've said everything I can say to this little girl, and I love her more than my life, and I can't choose for her. I tried to apply to be her roommate. They wouldn't have me. My daughter became a militant virgin in college. Let me tell you what I mean by that. She was pretty quiet about her commitment to purity in high school. She had to live in my shadow. But when she got to State University, she wasn't the sex lady's daughter, or she was just Kara. And she got loud pretty fast, not because of me, because she saw the pain on her dorm floor every single day. My cell phone became the hotline for freshman floor 6. An immense amount of pain. And my daughter woke up real quick and looked around her and said, this is not what I want. This isn't what I want. And on her wedding day, my beautiful daughter walked that aisle, and as she stood at the altar with my son-in-law, just before they put their wedding bands on, both of them removed the purity rings they've been wearing since high school, took them off their hands, walked off the altar, handed them to their parents, came back up to the altar and put their wedding bands there. This matters. It matters. And it requires that you think beyond today. And you think about what that day will look like for you. I know I've got students in here who've had sex. I need to speak to you as I close. If you've had sex and tune me out, tune me back in real quick. I don't care what you did before you walked in this gym. I don't. I care what you do when you leave. And you walk out of here and say, it doesn't matter, I've already done it, and I don't need to listen to you. And you do not need to listen to me. Absolutely do whatever you want. And maybe up until today, you've escaped some permanent physical damage. I don't know that, and neither do you. Please get tested. I'm begging you to see a doctor. Girls, you have to. You need to see a doctor this week, again in 6 months, again in a year, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Who's to say the next time you decide to put this gun to your head, it doesn't go off? Who's to say the strain of HPV you're carrying today won't kill you, but the one you get next year will? When are you going to begin to build discipline, integrity, trust in your relationships? You could start today. Don't ever let anyone tell you that because you've had sex in the past means you have to keep doing it. You don't. A little girl ran up to me, got right in my face. She said, Pam, I am a recycled virgin. I said, cool. She said, when I was 15, I had sex, Pam. It left me with a lot of pain, and I knew better. I knew I didn't want to keep getting used and dumped. I didn't want scarred fallopian tubes and cancer. I wanted sex to mean something. And I asked Jesus to forgive me, and I made a commitment that day to God, to myself, and to my future husband that I will never have sex again until the day I'm married. I said, sweetheart, that's amazing. My Bible says if you will confess your sin, he is faithful and just and will forgive you, will cleanse you from all unrighteousness, will throw your sin as far as the east is from the west. But hear me carefully. Repentance is not saying sorry to God for your sin on Thursday morning so you can do it again on Friday night. It is a 180-degree turn from sin to righteousness. It's doing what Jesus said to that woman caught in adultery, dragged at his feet, naked, told by the men in the crowd, well, she's a whore, she's a prostitute. Our law says she should be stoned. What do you say, Jesus? Scripture said that Jesus knelt down and wrote in the sand. Don't know what he wrote. He looked up and he said, if you're without sin, you pick up your rocks and throw them at her. And one by one, those men left the temple, and he was alone. He looked at the woman and said this, woman, where are your accusers? She said, they're gone, Lord. Hear the words of Jesus that day. He said, neither do I condemn you. Get up and keep thinking that men are going to meet your needs. Get up and think the next guy you have sex with will stay around next time. Get up and use a condom. Is that what Jesus said? No, he said, get up and sin no more. If it were not possible for her to get up off that floor and never sin again, why would Jesus have asked her to do it? It would have been a cruel joke. You know why he said it? Because she could. Because no one has fallen so far that they are beyond the grace of God. That's why he went to the cross. Back to my little girl that was the recycled virgin, remember? I said, sweetheart, you've been forgiven. That's awesome. Someday when you get married, you're going to have to tell that boy what you did when you were 15. He will have to know. But you're going to be able to look at that boy and you're going to be able to say, I was forgiven. And for the last 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, whatever it is, not last week. I slept with every guy I ever dated, but last week I changed. No. For 7 years, I've waited for you. And only you. And we're going to know what kind of damage was done. We have had years to make sure she's okay. You can walk out of here and pick up that sin and keep on sinning. And there's a lot of pain at the end of that road. Or today, Thursday, January 9th, you can bow at the cross and ask for forgiveness and walk away changed. Someone's going, yeah, but Pam, you don't get it. If I go to my boyfriend or girlfriend and tell him I love him, we love each other, we do. And I don't want to break up, but I don't want the sex, they'll dump me. If I won't have sex with them, it's over. Really, what's your relationship based on? It's based on sex. Want to test a relationship that's sexual? Want to find out if they love you? Do you even want to know? Got a challenge for you today. Stop. See what's left. If they love you, they will still be around, and you'll have an opportunity to work on what makes something last. If they dump you simply because you won't have sex with them, you just learned what that was all about. As painful as it is, students, ask any adult in this building. It is a lot less painful to learn it when you're 17, sweetheart, than to learn it 8 years into a marriage where someone's cheated on you, dumped you, and left you with 2 kids. Don't believe me? You don't have to. Prove me wrong. You go right ahead and prove me wrong. If you're sitting in this gym and you've never had sex, you're a virgin, I got something I want to say to you. First thing I want to say to you is you're not alone. You're not the last virgin on the planet. Everybody's not doing it. No matter what you might think or what Hollywood might tell you, everybody's not doing it. The CDC said about 4 years ago that we now have more virgins in high school than we have had in 15 years. The number of sexually active high school students is dropping. 57% of high school seniors in that study 4 years ago were virgins. That is the majority. If you're sitting here today and you're a virgin, can I say this to you? Because you might not hear it again, and this morning I'd like you to hear it from me. Good for you. Good for you. You have something so special and so valuable, it is worth whatever it takes to get to your marriage with no past, no fear, and no disease. It will not be easy. It's not going to be easy. You're going to get laughed at. Kids are going to say to you, well, you're not having sex. Everybody's doing. You some religious freak. You like Star Wars? What's the problem? Don't listen to that. I had a senior boy, Buffalo, New York, chase me down the hall of his Catholic high school. The boy was 6'8". In my world, that's a giant. Teachers saw him. They said, Pam, that tall boy at the end of the talk chasing you down the hall, 4.0 student, full ride scholarship to play basketball at Duke University. Chased me down the hall of his high school doing this. You do not miss a 6'8" senior yelling virgin at you ever. He caught up with me. I'll never forget him. He said this. He said, Pam, it's easy for girls to tell people they're virgins. Easy for the girls. But you don't know what it's like for a boy. You don't hear the locker room talk. You don't hear the boys on my basketball team bragging about who they're having sex with. What do I say to my friends when they're mocking me because I'm a senior and I'm a virgin? I said, young man, the next time your friends start to tease you because you're saving yourself for your wife, I want you to look right at your friends and I want you to say this. Any day, tonight, I could choose to be like you, but you will never again be like me. Once it is gone, it is gone. It takes that long to throw it away. It takes a lot of integrity and self-respect to wait, and you're worth it. I told you I couldn't choose for you. The choice is yours. You deserve the best. Don't settle for less than that. I got to ask a very famous young man. When I met him, it was like scary. Now he's going to come and help open our clinic or help bless our clinic in a few months. Young man by the name of Tim Tebow, Heisman Trophy winner from University of Florida, the Gators. When the first time I met him, a while back, probably 10 years ago, he was playing for Denver. I said, Tim, how you doing it? How you keeping your standards and how are you remaining a virgin? He was being mocked and the media mocked him and businessmen were mocking him. There was a businessman who offered, I think it was something like $500,000 to any girl who could prove she had sex with him. Media just wanted to tear him down. I said, Tim, how you doing it? He looked at me, I'll never forget it. He said, Pam, my faith is real. This is not a game. My faith is real. Let me tell you something, students. If this relationship between you and Jesus is right, all of these relationships will be right. If this is not right, none of these relationships will be right. All the strength and power you need to live a life of holiness in a very unholy culture is found in your faith. Philippians 4:13 says this: I can do all things because I'm so amazing. No. I can do all things through Christ who gives me the strength. You have all you need for that. Lutheran High School, thank you. God bless you. I'm going to let your principal dismiss you officially, but make good choices as you go. Be a light to your friends and hang on to Jesus. That's what matters. God bless you. Thank you so much.
Well, again, Pam, thank you for sharing with us, and blessings to you as you continue to speak to other students as well throughout your travels and such. So thank you. You are dismissed.